Realms of Strength Season 2. So I'm here with Joe Cooperman. Now, typically, Dustin Chadwick's here. I've had him on since the start. He's out doing his, I think I told you, Joe, he's out doing his like Joe Rogan experience, hunting elk for
Yeah.
3 to 4 weeks. It's kind of what he does every September. It takes a whole month and he just goes out and just kills wild animals. So he eats nothing but elk for a whole year.
Yeah.
So I took this opportunity. Like, I have to bring this guy in. Got to bring Joe Cooperman in because you have a background and knowledge I do not have, and I will not have. It's nothing I'll ever accomplish. So give everyone a base of like who you are, what your background is, what you do, and where you see yourself like going. Just so like everyone has an idea when we're talking who you are.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first off, I have to say thank you. It's a kind of like a huge compliment to be asked to, kind of co-host with you. I put you in a very high light of, what it is that you do and your specialty that you bring to the plate of strength and conditioning. So, I would be lying to you if I said I wasn't a little nervous when you asked me. I was like, oh shoot, like
I
um,
appreciate it.
I don't know if I could keep up, but we'll
No, you
find out,
will.
right?
No, you will.
So anyways, my name's Joe Cooperman. I am a chiropractor out in Scottsdale, Arizona. I partnered with Premier Fitness Systems out here, which is a strength and conditioning gym that's been around for quite some time that works with high athletics. And my my upbringing, I guess you could say, in becoming a chiropractor, I studied nutrition in undergrad at University of Arizona. And then after that, I went to chiropractic school in San Jose, California, which is called Palmer West. It was a more sport oriented type facilities. In my background, as I was like, before I started chiro school, I was doing a little bit of personal training, nutritional consulting type stuff. And, when I was in school, I kind of put that on the wayside and just kind of had my experience with a little bit of like biomechanics, not too, I wasn't super nerdy about it, so to speak. I think you could say I was more of like a classic gym bro. And as I started to get more knowledge and understand the human body and anatomy and sports performance, it started to make a little more sense in my head as to how to blend that into treatment and become what I am today, which is I'm a strength coach and a chiropractor, kind of a blend of both worlds. So um, I took an opportunity when I was in school to go do my preceptorship at St. Mary's College in Moraga with a Division I program. So the head athletic trainer there and the head of sports medicine was a chiropractor and an athletic trainer. He brought me in. I did a lot of treatment. I did a lot of overseeing of programming for strength and conditioning in regards to the teams of like rugby, basketball, and baseball, and actually rowing, which was really cool. I found myself being an avid CrossFitter that thought I was highly competitive, and I like the feeling of, working really hard. And I like looking at training in a way to think, how can this be done a little bit differently to where people aren't necessarily being completely run down, but they can have really high output and high performance. And that was one thing I kind of pride myself on, is I might not be the strongest person in the gym, but I know I can go. And I think that's because of my methods of how I utilize this machine, this meat wagon, how I move it around and how I conserve energy and how I would create an output. And I think coaching that through people is a really valuable skill to have, especially in the world of CrossFit. So when I graduated and I moved up to Sacramento, I started to help others understand that and just kind of took it from there. Eventually, I left the practice I was in Granite Bay, and I came out back to Scottsdale, Arizona, where I'm originally from. And I brought my then girlfriend with me, who is now my wife and the mother of my 2 kids. We just had a kid 2.5 weeks ago. That's our second one. Is a little boy. His name's Beck. He's a cool kid. And then I got Quinn, who's 17 months old, and she's a riot. Yeah, and I've just been having a good time being a chiropractor and kind of bringing a different, I guess, lens to the Scottsdale area. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of people that do what I do. And I think I bring a nice little blend of all those worlds back together and help people find their way and navigate their way through pain and injury and still trying to perform.
Yeah. So for me, when you say like you bring an aspect that not a lot of people have, is that chiropractic world into an actual, like sometimes you'll come across, like you go see a doctor and this doctor is a great doctor. That doctor has never been under a barbell in his life. Or you go see a chiropractor and he or she's a great chiropractor, but that outside of maybe swinging a a 9 iron every other week. They never do anything like physically active. So in that aspect, what's the biggest mind shift that you feel like you have when it comes to, hey, I have this background of being a chiropractor, but I also have this background in strength and conditioning. When you work with those like athletes and adjusting them, like what's the biggest thing you see when you go to work on them that you realize like, wow, like if these two worlds, there's one thing I could suck from the chiropractic world and just inject it into the athletic world, what would it be?
Well, I'm definitely not the first person to ever say such a thing, because I've learned this from a lot of people, and it made the most sense to me as
Okay.
I was learning more and more, is access to range of motion. I would think that too many people don't understand where they can and can't move, and they trust feelings, and they trust that their form and technique is perfect. And I wish that people understood that it has a lot less to do with form. Forms is extremely important, but force output and force tolerance is key. Having access to the certain ranges of motion is key. If you don't have it, you won't be able to use it, and you're just a ticking time bomb over time. I wish that people had a better understanding of that and trusted that process a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Is that what you see when they come in? Like you've name dropped to me people you've worked with. I'm not gonna, unless you bring them up. I'm not gonna go public with them. But like you've name dropped like several people you've worked with. Like one being like very top shelf, like professional bodybuilder. And when you worked on a male of that size and that compact muscle tissue, what do you see when you're working on someone like that? Where you're like, wow, like this guy's really tight here. Because the type of training that this individual does, and a lot of people are doing now, is more a heavy type training for that world.
Mhm.
Like, what are you seeing in that aspect?
With that specific person,
Yeah.
I was actually really, I was, I wasn't 100% blown away, but
Mm-hmm.
I expected it, considering he was, a top dog, top of the food chain
Yeah.
in regards to bodybuilding. The best of the best have access to range. The best of the best have the flexibility and also the active component of range of motion to get into certain positions that they train. And he's a master of that. He was really, really good at that. He had a couple holes that we would try to improve on, but he was pretty darn good. I would say the drastic difference between him and the rest of the bodybuilders that I do treat, not to, throw shade at them,
Yeah.
they're stiff as a board. They train stiffness, and they are stiff, and they can't get into certain positions to help them with whether it's posing, contracting a certain muscle group, giving that illusion that their shoulder blades can move and protract outwards.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for the next best stretch to get them there, and they lack the understanding that in order to do that, the front needs to pull you there and contract and shorten. So the top of the food chain, they get that. The everybody below it, like IFBB pros, like you
Yeah.
start throwing all those terms out. I feel like a lot of them really struggled to get there, which is why you don't see too many of them showing up at Olympia.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of that when it comes to like that level where you have like the absolute top versus like those aspiring to be at the top? Do you think
Mhm.
when you say they get it or they have it, do you think that's between their ears, or do you think that's an innately genetic and they can just do it?
I
Which I
think it
mean,
has a lot.
more or less.
Yeah. Well, like that's the whole argument of structure and function, right? So it's like, is someone's structure dictating the function and the output that they have the capabilities of? Usually what we'll see when someone's been smushed by a barbell over time, you can kind of morph the skeleton. And some people have their skeletons that are naturally just the way they are. And they might be a little wider in their rib cage and their pelvis, and they might be a little more narrow, and they might be somewhere in between. From the people that I assess, like high level athletics, CrossFitters, power lifters, you know, bodybuilders, there's a certain structure that fits the mold of the activity, and Olympic weightlifters even. Um, the more narrow someone is, the more likely they are, in my opinion, they're going to find themselves being in more of a rotational sport. You got your tennis players, your golfers, your runners. They tend to be a little more like smaller
Yeah.
in that region through the rib cage and pelvis. You see a power lifter, boy, they're wide. They lack certain ranges of motion, typically internal rotation of their hips. They struggle to rotate. And then you start to see these bodybuilders that they're all over the board, because everybody's going after this aesthetic. And I do think there's a sweet spot, and that high end guy landed himself in what I see out of CrossFitters is kind of somewhere in between. This person has really good range. They actually have really good control. They're good athletes, and they can perform in many different ways. They can rotate, they can bend, they can extend, they can move a lot of different ways. They can balance. They're a little more centered. So I try my best to not allow structure to dictate how things are, because I think you can outfunction shitty structure. But that takes time. It takes skill. It takes development. And that takes a little bit of convincing on my end to let people know, like, hey, it might not necessarily change, but your performance will. And that's what we're after.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think some of it is like partially genetically inclined.
Oh,
to answer
100%.
that question. Yeah.
100%.
Like,
I mean, you can't.
I'm sure you work with a lot of, I mean, like, especially being at Westside.
Yeah.
Those, like, you could look around the room and you're like, everybody here, kind of looks the same, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For the most part.
All the females that were top tier, like when I look back at them, like all the ones that, like, they're all somewhat, don't worry, their height was different, but clavicle to hip to muscle belly, they all looked about the same. All the males, just about the same. Again, height is a thing, but it was, I mean, very seldom did you get someone who was tall and lanky and could pull 900 pounds, though I have seen it.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen a 6'8" guy doing that. And so, I mean, that's a large aspect. And it's like, some people just genetically have it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Some people just don't. And that's one of those things, like the ones that genetically have it, at least in my opinion, the athletes I've worked with, the majority of them, they don't realize they have it, and they just take it for granted. And that's one of those frustrating things as a strength and conditioning coach. You see, you're like, wow, you have no idea. Like, you have no idea. Like, Tom Brady is incredible. Tom Brady, in my opinion, is the GOAT. I think Aaron Rodgers is right there. He can solidify it if he next couple seasons with Jets, but like, Tom Brady also wasn't a genetic freak. Yeah. He just was a fanatic at making sure everything he could possibly do was as best as it possibly could be. You know, like, very seldom you get the marriage of those two. Very seldom.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that work ethic, there's some people need to learn how to do that. And then some people just know, they're like, I am not the best. I do have to try really hard. Like, I'm nowhere near Tom Brady, mind you, but I'll look at, people like to look back at Tom Brady's his combine.
Oh, it's like, great. It's a great video. So
it's
awesome.
Amazing.
Running in old man shoes. Like,
if you were to judge him, like, who would have, like, at that time, if people were betting, if you were betting, by the way, I'm going to be betting on the Jets quite a bit this coming season.
Oh, absolutely.
They're going to be fun. Yeah. If you were betting, you would never put your money on him that he was going to be this supreme, elite, something we've never seen, extended career, highest level, just gets that drive. The moment he gets pissed is the moment that the other team made a huge mistake. You don't see that very often. He has this insane killer mentality, and he's really just average. Yeah.
Like, genetically, very average. Yeah, tall. He has the height and everything for it. Don't get me wrong. But like, you're not looking at him like, he's not a Megatron. He's not like built for that position like DK Metcalf. Like, what the hell is that thing? You know, not like that. I mean, there are other quarterbacks too. Like you look at a Cam Newton, and you were like, man, that guy could do everything if he didn't get the crap beat out of him every season. But like, oh yeah, 100%. Let me ask you this, because this is kind of like my major nerd question for you. Okay. As I put my super awesome glasses back on because I'm so old.
Yeah, I like those.
Yeah, I know. Well, I look at a screen so much because as strength and conditioning coaches, that's what we do now. 90% of our time is on a computer.
You got the tablet out?
Unfortunately, so my perch mount, I don't have a perch mount. I can't afford that. Yeah. But if I could, I would. I would 100% buy one. When I work with like top, not necessarily average, like games level CrossFit athletes, when I'm working with not necessarily soldiers, but like operators, like a Ranger, Navy SEAL, that type level of human being, I hesitate saying they're the same because I get a lot of backlash, especially from the operator community, that they're not. Like, to be fair, yeah, they're not. You're talking about complete One's trying to be the best at exercising, one's trying to be the best at killing. Completely different species of human being. But they have the same issues. And the issues I'm seeing, and clarify me that when you work with CrossFitters, especially the top tier ones who've been in the game for a long minute, when I look at them, their knees are usually shot and they have no idea how to use their back musculature. And then I'm looking back at that knee, I'm like, okay, well, the hamstrings are incredibly weak. The glutes are non-existent. And then lat-wise, they've never been actually taught how to use their lats, which then you start getting massive pronation. Their bicep tendonitis is always inflamed. And everything they do in any pulling motion is always bicep-based. And their elbows keep getting inflamed. Is this something that you see? And if you do in these areas, what do you do on your end from a chiropractic standpoint? And then go into a little bit of your philosophy on the strengthening of these areas on the back end, and once you adjust them and put them in a good position.
Yeah, for sure. So I definitely see that a ton. I think it's an easy way, not just because of someone's shape and position, but I feel like just training the posterior chain is so foreign for so many people that they find themselves dumping into positions and overloading tissues that they can commonly train a little more efficiently. So like a bicep, for instance, teaching a bicep curl is not very hard, but teaching how to execute a perfect bicep curl is really, really hard. So like the awareness of where someone's shoulder blade is in relation to their like thoracic cage, right? Or what their elbow is doing and what their wrist is doing as they come up into elbow flexion. There's so many details that matter, but when it comes to playing with a barbell, that's the last thing that we're thinking about. So it's easy to dump back into positions where the body wants to be more comfortable. For instance, allowing the shoulder blade to protract, it puts a little more pressure and tension onto the anterior compartment of the shoulder, and boom, you have bicep tendonitis, you have some sort of capsular issue or impingement showing up, name the diagnosis.
Yeah.
Those things from my end, they matter a lot because the tissue obviously is pissed. The tissue is responding in a certain way. And my job is to make the tissue feel better. Then on top of that, my job is to also teach them where that hole is at so that they stop. Just like I like to make the analogy, if you slam your head against the wall, it might not hurt at first and you might not have a headache, but if you keep doing it repetitively over and over and over again, eventually you're going to get a headache, or eventually you're going to get this little swelling spot right here in the front of your head where you've been making contact with that wall. We're trying to not hit the wall anymore with your shoulders. Please stop doing this. Let's repattern, let's retrain. It doesn't mean like completely stop and don't ever do X, Y, or Z exercise. It means we need to work on your positions, and we need to train you on how to do this a little bit properly. I'll assess for passive range of motion and see if they have it. If they don't, that's step one. They need passive flexibility to get there right away. And then you got to train them on how to actively get into better positions so that they stop pushing so much pressure into the shoulder girdle or the lower back or into the back of their knees, or into the front of their knees where they're getting patellar issues or they grinded away on meniscus over years. So yeah, it just becomes more of this education process it's nuanced. It's for some people it's pretty boring, but if you're a high performer, it matters. And when they start to notice that their pains go away and their ranges start to improve and they can sit into a different spot and they do the same exercise and it feels different than the millions of other times they've done it, that's buy-in.
Okay. So in those regions, you do see that for CrossFitters, especially in
huge amounts.
Oh
yeah, especially like a lat. It's so interesting to me. Like when you look at CrossFitters, like as far as aesthetics go, I'm not comparing like a bodybuilder to a CrossFitter, just like general aesthetics for a human, dude. They've got great aesthetics. You know, it's a really nice build. You see these thicker looking front of the leg. Some of them look like they have a big butt, but they're just shoved into anterior pelvic tilt and hyperextending their lumbar spine.
Yeah.
Some of them do have developed glutes because they put stress through the tissues and those tissues have grown. But if you were to ask them to isolate and to actually contract, it's virtually impossible for them to do that.
Yeah.
Like they cramp up like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll show you they have the flexibility to get there. So like I'll tell them like, hey, I don't like stretching is a huge waste of time. Getting manual therapy to open this up is a huge waste of time. What we need to do is teach the body to get there, utilizing your hamstrings or glutes if we're going after hip extension, and maybe a little bit of that adductor to kick in.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really, I've always found that to be interesting. And, this, that CrossFitter is so hard to convince, especially at that level, that
I know.
this is going to help them when they're sitting there telling you, like, my back's been killing me for years and it's the reason why I crap out for this
Right.
event, or whatever the lift is, like a lat, dude, their lat development is wildly like you go like into this region, the thickness is so dense and they can't literally row. Just
Yeah.
single arm dumbbell, like a single arm dumbbell row. Keep it low, pull that elbow in towards your side, and they're like, what's happening? It's like, do you feel that? Yeah, what's that? That's your lat.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
pull from up here and do the same thing and drag that elbow down. Do you feel this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's your lat. You're supposed to use that when you do this thing called pull-ups.
Yeah.
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 And you do millions of them.
Yeah. I mean, my philosophy has changed, over the years as I think every professional, they're doing this as not their hobby, as their lab, that should change because you should evolve. You should get better over time. Like I'm better now than I was 6 months ago. Damn sure I'm better now than I was 6 years ago. Like I look back at things I've written years ago. I was like, and you just think to yourself, what the hell was I thinking? What
Yeah.
was I like on crack? Like was I having a good day? I just was feeling myself. And you mentioned that to convince some of these CrossFitters, especially the top tier, like going to top range of semis into the games, into I'm making NIL level money. And who are you? You don't have a blue check mark or 10,000 followers on Instagram. Like that kind of level, which to be fair is where we're at now. That's just the reality of the situation. And you always you try to explain to them like, well, this is what you need to do, and they can't isolate anything. And when I look at these when they come in, my philosophy used to be cool. We're gonna go through. We're not gonna do. My base training that I think of when I go to actually think of a training system is the conjugate system. It's 4 days a week, and then it extrapolates from there. Now it's at a point now, and I'm sure you're the same way, where you have a base training system, and then probably within 2 or 3 seconds, subconsciously, you've moved on from it because this person is not. You just don't need it. You just don't need that. So when I get CrossFitters in, it's basically 2-day maximum in my facility, and it's like just pieces. We're going to do basic progressive overload.
Yep.
Pieces. We're going to chase reps and then add a little bit of pounds, and actually teaching them to use their lat. And the majority of them that actually do it will inevitably say, as long as there's no one else in there, so their pride isn't bruised, they're like, wow, that's all I can do with that. I'm like, yeah. If you sit on your lat and you're doing a single arm high row, whatever you're doing, 50 pounds is it. The ceiling is the roof. And that's it. They're doing like 12 reps. Like, what? I don't understand. But they do that for 2 or 3 weeks. And then they go and do rope climbs one day and come back in. Next, like, dude, I did rope climbs the first time in like a month. My lats are blasted. I don't feel anything in my bicep. I don't feel anything in my elbow at all. I don't feel anything in my shoulder. Just my lats are sore. I'm like, good. So neurologically, you're starting to catch on your lat. And the same thing with the glutes and the hammies. Like a lot of them, you put them on like a standing hammer strength leg curl.
Yeah.
Or a seated leg. A bodybuilding, we're just going to do bodybuilding exercises because we're just going to isolate. Like I said, it's basically the conjugate system, just back end stuff, simplified way down. They do a standing hamstring curl. And these are women who are like 150 pounds, shredded to the bone all the time because there's freaks. And took 25 pounds for like 6 reps where they're not yanking it or arching their back. They're actually using their hamstring. It blows their mind. But then again, I tell them, okay, cool. When you load a hang clean, when you load a hinge, what should you be feeling? Half of them will say their back, and the other half will actually say glutes and hams, even if they're not feeling their glutes and hams. So I was like, okay, cool. So if you're doing a standing hamstring curl with 25 pounds for 5, let's extrapolate this 4 months out, and now you're doing 75 pounds for 5, which means you can blast that 25 pounds for 30, 40 reps. If you're loading a hinge properly, if you're glutes and hamstrings, wouldn't that lock it in more? And it starts to dawn on them, and it'll still take a couple weeks. To be fair, I mean, I'm sure you see too, like a lot of them are like massive volume whores.
Yeah.
They have to do obscene amounts. Like you don't have, like if you're doing for strength, you don't have to.
Yeah.
That's the beauty part.
Well, that's funny. Like one of the questions I was going to ask you today was something that had to do with volume, but
let's dive into
it.
Let's do it.
It was
this
like,
is the best part.
How do you, Joe Lasko, determine the parameters for your volume when you do work with someone in that kind of scenario? Because you know that they're going out there, and even if you gave them all the rules in the world, let's just say you took over their whole entire strength conditioning program,
I get the keys.
Specifically for a CrossFitter, you get the keys.
Oh, this is
what are the chances? What are the chances if they did exactly and everything what you did? What are the chances they're not going to go off and go do the things that mentally they have to feel like they're going to go do? So let's just say if you had the keys and you just like, you're not going to go do anything, but now you have the key, but they're not going to let you use it. And now you have to play with that volume. What does that usually look like for you? Like, how are you determining that?
Okay, so just to clarify, they are coming to me, but they're going to do whatever they want to do.
Yep. On
the back end, front end of the day and the week. Okay. Here's the thing. I know, and this is one of the selling points. And this is one of the base things I try to explain, especially to that CrossFit population, especially the very, very competitive ones who are at the top. Like, first, this is something Lou always said too. First time you ever bench pressed, what'd you get? The guys usually remember. It's usually something really embarrassing, like 70 pounds. I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
So it wasn't 5 pounds. No. So what did you do leading up to that? Well, I just never, blah, blah, blah. I just did push-ups. Okay, cool. So you did a lot of push-ups. Yeah. So like, I just kept doing a lot of stuff. Okay, cool. Do you remember the second time you went to bench? Do you remember if you added more weight or more pounds? And a lot of them won't remember, but they will remember this. When you retested that, was it a jump? Like, they were like, well, yeah. Like, well, how much of a jump? They'll say 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 pounds. Like, okay, cool. So you're telling me for all those years, you did all that volume, and then you touched a bar, and it was 70 pounds, and then you trained on it, probably improperly, to be really fair, but in a 3-month span, 3 months isn't the first 9 years of your life, how much you've done. So in the 3 months, you added, let's say this would be fun, say 30 pounds. They're like, yeah, okay, all right, cool. Let's just take it even a step further. Name me a body part. And they usually for the majority of CrossFitters, it's going to be like back. It's going to be some type of pulling. It's always some sort of gymnastics pulling type motion. Like, okay, cool. Let me ask you this. If I told you could get on this lat pull down device, whatever it is, a lat pull down, and I told you can do one set of 5 to 10 reps to a good not even failure, a good concentric strain. So a concentric failure, essentially. Okay. And then you came back next week and you were able to add 1, 2, or even 3 reps to that same weight by only doing one set, and then you left the gym. Would you be better? And they're like, well, yeah, I'd be able to add more. Okay, cool. Let's say that first week you did 2 sets to eccentric strain, and you came in the next week and you only added 1 or 2 reps. Would you be better? Like, well, yeah, I'd be better. Okay, all right. Let's say the first week you came in, you did 3 sets between 5 to 10, and then that's next week you came in and you only added 1 rep. Would you be better? And they start to slow down a little bit and think like, well, I guess I would. Let's say if you did 4 sets and you came in next week and you just matched it, you couldn't get any more. Would you be better? Some will say yes, because they say they generated capacity. Like, all right, well, that's cool, but aren't you already doing that in your world? Yeah. Like, okay, well, then we don't need to worry about that. Like, why are you paying me to have you just do something you already do? So we start off by, I'm always saying, okay, cool. We're going to pick 3 movements. If I see you 2 times a week, we're going to pick 3 movements for your lower posterior chain. We're going to pick 3 movements for your upper posterior chain. I mean, very basic, very simple. And to be very fair, open, and honest, they're probably going to be movements these, CrossFitters have never done. To be really open, unless we're talking about someone like a Froning like a Barnhart, like someone who has been through collegiate athletics for a
Yep.
long time. Even still, you're years removed from doing any of that. So you
Yeah.
put them on something they've never done, you're going to get a neural adaptation, massive spike immediately.
Hmm.
So there's no way you can miss that. And then as you continually go on, you just play with that pounds versus reps, keep working their way up. In that way, I'm keeping their road mileage very, very low.
Yep.
That for me in that world, in the tactical world, is absolutely key. If I can keep the road mileage down, that's incredible. Even if their intensity is high, I don't see that as much as a problem, because if we're talking about your intensity, your quote intensity is high, unquote, on a single arm cable high row, I don't think that's going to negatively impact the rest of your training.
Hmm.
I've never seen it. It never negatively impacts anyone. Now, a lot of this is incorporated with actual coaching cues, things I've accumulated over time that I do in the moment.
Hmm.
But in that time, you can only do so much as you can recover from. That's where that
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4 set, and then come back and try it again. That's the only way I can ever describe it to someone. I actually had a conversation with a competitive strongman the other day. It was the same thing. He's like, I'm just worn out all the time. I'm doing 80% auxiliaries. I'm like, well, you're not a power lifter, so your main lifts are your events.
Hmm.
CrossFitter is not a power lifter either. Their main lifts, their squat, bench, and deadlifts, quotes. Granted, they're going to be doing those, to be really fair, but
Yep.
what are you really bad at? Are you really, really bad at sandbag carries? That's probably going to be your main lift. And then your
Yep.
other auxiliary lifts are going to be as minimal as possible with absolute precision. Like
Yep.
I always tell people, like you can't be perfect. It's in my opinion, it's physiologically and mentally impossible to have everything fire absolutely perfect, mentally be engaged. But if
Yep.
I tell them to have maximal precision through this very, very low volume, you give one opportunity to do something like mama spaghetti, you just got to really just grab it and do it in the moment and do it right. So that maximal precision idea with very, very low volume just blows everybody up. And
Yeah.
it does take, to be really fair, it takes a couple weeks. And the first time you talk to them, it's like a 30, 45-minute conversation to
Hmm.
get them to buy into that, just to get them to buy into it.
Yeah.
And but once they do, and they come back next week and everything spikes, it's like, this is like witchcraft. Did you like lower the weight? Like, no, that's the exact same weight. It's the exact same standardized form you just did. So that's honestly, that's what I do now. I have 3 CrossFitters. That is literally what I do now. I think one has been doing it with me for a year. So her volume then we have 5 exercises as
Hmm.
opposed to 3. And then come competition, we just cut that volume drastically in half.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's pretty much where I'm at with that. How do you approach that when people come to you with that?
Yeah. Well, so like, I work with some UFC fighters. So
Hmm.
I've told you about them. It's Courtney Casey and Jakar Close. So he's a lightweight. He walks around like 190s typically. And when it comes to volume parameters, I feel like MMA in regards to sport and CrossFit are really interesting, because CrossFit's like, you're the master of none, but the jack of all trades. And a really good MMA athlete, the hope is that you have some sort of mastery in something and you're still a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
So when it comes to strength and conditioning, you mentioned earlier, like you look back at what you did 3 years ago or 5 years ago, you're like,
Hmm.
what the fuck was I doing?
Yeah.
And I look at that for myself with them is, how, granted, we were all a little bit younger. So physiologically, you can challenge the body a certain way and they can tolerate it to a certain point, but are you actually getting them the gains that they need and to be better at their sport? So now, after many of surgeries for some of these athletes, it's like we have to be a little more specific and a lot more precise with how we're executing certain lifts, to make sure that they're not crushing themselves to the point that they can't go train. So I've worked with them for 4.5 years now. So it's like I know them like the back of my hand. So I can make those same adjustments that you were talking about. It's like live adjustments in regards to the training. It's like you could just watch them move and you're like, something's not right now. I've
Hmm.
seen this 1,000 times from them. And
Hmm.
we're just going to either axe it, bring it up, say, hey, we need to make a change here. I don't know what you're doing. If you're being lazy or something, but you tired, what are you feeling? Oh, I feel fine. All right, let's get focused. Boom, still sucks. Axle lift, change it some sort of way, right? Make the lift easier for them. Because at the end of the day, like volume in the gym for MMA, there's many ways to skin the cat, but one of the things that I've always thought was we should put more precedence on strength, on the actual conditioning side of strength, like tissue conditioning, cardiovascular output, zone 2 training, and high maximum cardiovascular output, and being able to recover from that. So it's really interesting because I think CrossFitters, they find themselves in a similar world when they're seeking holes, right? When they're trying to figure out a better way to do what they're doing. So it's like, how do you give them this volume here so that they can go do insane amounts of volume that they're going to do for 3.5 to 4 hours? So, we have a strength coach that's shadowing and kind of like hanging out. I think he's doing his internship with Brandon Harris, who works with Sean O'Malley at our gym. And we were chatting, and he's like, who would you say was, like, out of all the athletes that you've worked with, is probably like the quote unquote easiest? And I was like, I don't think any of them are easy. That's number one. I was like, but I do think that as a new strength coach, if you just took a step back and you looked at CrossFit, you can just pick and choose exactly what they're not getting and give it to them and watch them do better. Now, there's a method to the madness. Like, you can do general things and make people a lot better, but if you can get really specific, they can do great. And so he never thought of it that way. He's like, that's interesting. So I told him, if you get them to rotate and body build, you're going to see some cool changes with a CrossFitter.
That's exactly, yeah. That's exactly it. I tell people all the time, like, when we get really deep in the conversation, like, been on conference calls, and I'm like, honestly, I hate to use the term boring because I mean, I can make anything fun, to be really fair.
I don't think it's boring at all.
Well, see, here's the thing, like,
awesome.
when you're, some people think, like, when they're coming in, like, we're running the same 3 auxiliary lifts. Granted, with their pancakes, I start with like mobility pieces and like a light special strength conditioning piece, and then end it on like a really deep strength endurance, like sled piece. But it's exactly what you said. Like, when it comes to like CrossFitters, they come in, I'm like, I'm just gonna put pieces on you. We just need to attack this part of the lat. That's all we're gonna do. Lat, upper back, lat, and then that's it. When you need hips, glutes, and hammies, we're gonna hit a hammy, a glute, and like a hip, and we're gonna out. Like, it's very, very simple. And in that way, like you're saying, like, how do you sneak that volume in to get them better and also allowing them to, same time, these guys and gals I'm seeing have already trained for an hour and a half in the morning, and they're gonna do like an hour and a half or 2 hours of like some sort of zone 2 thing at night. I don't want to buzz them out, but I know if I'm doing this much, like just this volume, I know next week we're going to be better for 60% of everything, if not or plus more. We're winning every time. We're winning. So I see in your world, like when you work with like UFC fighters, you can kind of do a little sexier shit.
Definitely.
It's like, no, much sexier than a standing hamstring curl. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, especially when it comes to Dre. I'm gonna toot his horn a little bit.
Okay.
Dre. So for a while there, like, I didn't have when I moved back to Scottsdale, I didn't have very many patients at all. So I spent a lot more time. Like, I remember it's like, dude, you don't need to do this consistent 1 hour block of training in order to get better. You can piece it up. Like, if we did like 20 minutes of just like, what, we're just going to do a max effort lift right now, right? Because we would utilize the conjugate system quite a bit. More of like I think Phil DeRue says this a lot. Condensed conjugate for MMA, right? He'll do like an upper lower split and then shift and do that, and that works really, really, really well for me and my time now. But at that time, we just had time, so I would work out with them, and it was really fun to get to see the competitive drive that all of them have, but Drakkar specifically. And you can do so much cool stuff with him, and he recovers really nicely for the most part. Now he's a little bit older, so we got to be a little more methodical, but then, I mean, the guy's a masochist. You kind of have to hold him back, or else he's going to go into deep, dark zones that you don't need him to go when it comes to training. And, like, if you he manhandles a sandbag like it's his job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's so fun. Variations of sandbags with him is like, you can just like, if you can make sense of an exercise,
Mm-hmm.
more than likely he can perform it.
Mm-hmm.
His execution with certain lifts, you might want to see get better, but in regards to like this, I deem safe, he can perform. He's an athlete. The guy's a freak. And it's just so cool with MMA because you can just like, you could play with patterns, any pattern you want to, for the most part, because you need what does CrossFit say? Being being prepared for anything is one of their like terms
Sure.
that they use.
Sure.
That's MMA to me. MMA is you need to be physically fluent in any which direction possible. Someone's going to have your arm stretched out in such a weird spot. And if you've never been there, shit breaks.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So you can really get, you can literally do anything as long as you just have a good reason and you know what the execution can somewhat look like. And sometimes it could be really, really wild and fun and really safe and get a great outcome from it. Yeah. So that's why I'm fascinated with working with MMA athletes, just because you know, you can take the FRISM model and do a wonderful job. You can do, you know, classic 3x3s and do a phenomenal job. You can just zone 2 train them and get them running up hills and wear a weight vest and drag a sled. They're going to do great. It's just so variable that I don't think anybody knows exactly what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
but whatever's working for them is working. So they continue down that path.
Yeah, I mean, there's no one way to skin that metaphorical cat. If you get there, you get there. It just is. I mean, when every like top tier like MMA guy, gal I've ever watched train, the most bang for buck things I've ever seen, whether it's at Westside or like from Phil's gym or really anywhere that's you know worth looking at and worth seeing. It's really crazy plyometrics, understanding how to use a kettlebell, and then like getting nasty at strongman stuff, like using sandbag variations, like getting nasty at that, just being this nasty motherfucker and being able to handle that really heavy ass awkward shit. It's just unbelievable. Like those 3 elements, in my opinion, and I have not worked with a lot of top, like in your case, top tier like MMA, UFC fighters. That stuff's just tits.
Yeah,
it just tits. Like it when he picks up a sandbag, does he just innately know how to lock his lats in on a sandbag, like bear hug? Oh, that's great, because normally people don't. Well, CrossFitters don't. Tactical operators, they have no idea what the fuck that means. Like depress retract, like what is that? They do, and they're like, oh, this is so much easier now. My biceps are on fire.
It's really funny because if you watch him do a pull-up, it'll drive you crazy. If you watch him pick up you watch him pick up a bag and you're like, what the heck? And then you watch him go do another pattern and it's like, wait, what happened? Yeah. why can't we get into this spot? You have to like retrain him, repattern it. Well, he was a collegiate wrestler. So, you know, grabbing people and holding them and squeezing them and driving his body into them and creating stiffness is something he's really, really just amazing at. He's been doing it his whole entire life. Yeah. So when you get someone like that and they go pick something up and hold it and then walk, you're going to see it. You don't have to train them. They're just going to naturally lock their elbows in a certain way. They're going to naturally depress their shoulder blades in a certain way, because if they were in a different position, they'll feel like that thing owns them now. Yeah. And it's like, no, you need to own the bag. The bag is yours. The bag is not, like, you don't want the bag to mess with you, because that's going to cause a flurry of problems. Right. But it's, I do think the same thing, like as far as like strongman goes, you know, and like even there's times where we implement like classic, like Dan John type stuff. It's like hinge, squat, rotate, push, pull, carry. You know, you can do such an amazing job with that world, and you can put emphasis on certain areas. And it's like, but at the end of the day, for me personally, just as my 2 cents, you need to not get tired. That's it. If you get tired in a fight, you're fucked. It's really hard place to come back from if you're not conditioned and cardiovascular. cardiovascularly and mentally, physically prepared.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you
I
ready
got a
for?
question for you.
Oh
I
well,
got another
let me
question
ask
for
you
you.
one first.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
You don't get to hog all this.
Oh,
Come on
dang.
now.
Okay.
All
My
right.
bad. I forgot.
That's
I'm
okay.
co-host.
That's okay. I get questions in all the time. So this one I get probably every 3 or 4 months. I'll get like 1 or 2 people asking me this. So I'm gonna shoot to you first. So what does your training look like right now for you? What are
That's
you
a
doing and why?
that's a good question. I was just talking to my buddy Joey Hoey about this last night because he's actually a guy that really got me heavy into conjugate. He really introed me. He owned a gym called Fitness Coalition out in Benicia, California. Strongman, CrossFit slash, you know, conjugate blend of fitness.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really cool gym. And he's a really good friend of mine, good dude. And so I was asking him like how his training is looking these days. Like how often is he working out? Before I used to be a guy that would work out 4 or 5 days a week. And then I had my daughter and I wanted to spend more time at home. And I kind of slowly backed off. Like I was going to CrossFit. I stopped going to CrossFit altogether. And this is the first time in like since, so it's been 17 months cold turkey from CrossFit.
Are you doing all right? Having
I'm doing okay.
endorphin withdrawals?
You know, it's amazing. My knees feel good. My back
Huh.
feels good. My neck feels good. My shoulders aren't hurting.
Yeah.
But either way, I I'm training. I'm starting to get into a new habit, and this started really recently, like the past week and a half. I'm waking up at 4:45 in the morning, and I'm going into the garage. I've got some weights. We've got a Peloton bike. I've got my sled. I'm getting a couple more sandbags that I can have at home, and when I wake up and I'm wiggling, I'm just making a decision right then and there. Like, what am I going to use today, and what do I want to focus on? So, like this morning, I woke up and I decided to just move everything and do like a light pump into certain areas, right? So into my biceps, into my hamstrings, into my glutes, and then I did some core stimulating stuff. So I was just like stimulating, not annihilating this morning.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to get into the habit of is doing some sort of focused upper body work and then focused lower body work the next day and switching that off because I am waking up at the same time every single day and I'm not going to annihilate myself. I'm just going to stimulate enough to the point that I'm trying to get. Right now, I'm personally after range of motion, controlled range of motion, deeper ranges of motion, and having the strength output into those positions. So I'm playing a lot more at end range of motion right now. And then if I feel like getting that nice tissue pump, then I'll just take one. I literally just do one set to complete failure. And that set's typically taking me about 2.5 minutes maximum. I'm trying to reach that failure somewhere around 1:45 to 2 minutes. And that tells me I picked a good weight. If I go beyond it, I think I went a little too light. So finding that range and that number is it takes a little bit of skill at first. So that's where I'm personally at.
Is that something you want to take and then like use the aspects of it with your athletes?
Yeah, I've done that in the past with them.
Okay.
So, and I actually think it's a really nice way to maintain, especially with MMA, you don't necessarily want to pack on a serious amount of muscle with these people or get them to gain weight. So, when it comes to, this is just my general synopsis, is maintaining their tissue health is keeping them a little bit sub threshold, right? Every now and then pulling them up towards that line and then backing off and then pulling them back up towards that line and backing off and seeing what happens to their shape over time and how they're eating. So, they need to do a weight cut in an 8-week process, sometimes 4, sometimes 3 weeks. Like you
Right.
never know what's going to happen. So the more, let's say, bodybuilding style exercises I choose to do, I need to be a little more methodical with their output because I don't want them necessarily growing in a certain way. I want their connective tissues getting thicker and stronger, but I don't necessarily want them to pack on pounds. I want them to stay in a place where they know that they can make weight.
Yeah, that's a problem for a lot of strength coaches who work with MMA UFC athletes. They'll give them too much hypertrophy. or they'll keep their reps too low with the reps, over 3. And it just becomes like they can't make weight because they just put on like 2 pounds of muscle. You can't vomit muscle. You can't
Yeah.
diuretic
Well,
muscle out. It ain't gonna happen then.
well,
You know?
like, but then again, it's like water sits in muscle, so you can pull water.
Yeah.
But the goal, you don't want them to become catabolic. And so it's like, here's the truth. Then MMA fighters out there are probably not going to like me saying this. The truth is that they don't do what they're supposed to do outside of camp in
Yeah.
regards to nutrition. They just don't. And I get it. And I totally understand. It's like, if you made me eat the way that they're supposed to eat and then go through this horrible water load and then cut this weight and be like literally on death's door for 48 hours or so, yeah, I'm going to want to smash some food and chill on the couch and do a whole lot of nothing. When I'm supposed to go do something, I'm going to get up and go do that thing. Then I'm going to go home, lay on the couch and chill, do nothing, and just smash food again. And it's like, the best battle I have is zone 2 training. That's it. I really do think that that's the easiest, simplest way to not mess with someone's joints, not to mess with their. It's like throw them on a bike and then tell them to stretch afterwards and regen type poses. Like go do some like yoga or go stretch.
Mm-hmm.
It gets a little tricky, but I really don't 100% trust out of camp nutrition, and sometimes in camp, to be honest.
Yeah. Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's an interesting world, but that's what my training is. My personal training is looking a little more like that, but I'm going to try to work my way back to a point where, like, I have certain goals in regards to my hips. I want to sit on the floor a little more comfortably these days.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big hole of mine in my pelvis, in my lower back. So I'm constantly working towards having that be a little more efficient, to kind of play with my little kids. And
Right.
That's where my fitness is geared. And then I really love conditioning. So I'm hopping on a Peloton and I'm having either like a smooth, easy ride, or I'm busting it out. If I have time and I'm at my spot, I'll get on the assault bike and I'll give that a serious rip.
Okay.
Just to show I still got it.
Right. Sometimes you just gotta show that the king's still the king and just have to do it. You just have to. I've worked at gyms before, and I've had like tactical athletes in, these are guys that weigh more than me and physically should be able to do much more than me, and they're complaining about how heavy it is and this, that, and the other, and I'll pull it cold without a belt, without any chalk, anything, like double overhanding, no hooking, and they stop talking at that point. They stop talking. They just do it. Sometimes you just gotta show them.
Yeah, you just gotta show.
Why.
It's okay.
They
say, wait a minute, where's your belt? You just lift your shirt up. What's his face? Who was the guy that said that?
No.
This is my belt.
No, I don't know.
He was a power lifter. He was like
man.
some huge Russian power lifter, and he like pulled. I want to say he pulled like 900 off the ground at an event, and then people were like, they're going nuts for him, and he ripped his singlet and goes, "This is my belt."
Yeah. I don't know. There are so many federations, so many powerlifters now. I don't know. I can't follow them. I can't keep track.
I know. It seems like there's one every single weekend, everywhere in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
all right.
I mean,
let me ask.
Okay.
Let me ask you this, because I think I don't know if you've ever talked about this one with the people that do listen, is because you do have such a powerful mind, and I've had the luxury of chatting with you and getting to know you over the past couple of years, a little bit here and there. What would you be doing if you couldn't be a strength coach?
Oh, that's really easy. That's really
easy. It's easy,
and it is, and it's actually changed. When I was in college, I knew the actual job I was going to do. I was like, okay, that my locked in job that I know I can accomplish is a strength conditioning coach. Mm-hmm. My achievable fantasy job is being in the WWE. And there was a significant time when I graduated. There were a lot of conversations with one of my ex-bosses who was in WWE for like 3-4 years. he knew the wrestling school, Rick's Wrestling School out of Baltimore. And I met them. I went to wrestling shows. I went in the back. Like we had very serious conversations about doing it. They loved like my physique. I had hair down to the middle of my back anyway. They just loved what I brought to the table. I had a loud mouth, and I was speaking, and you couldn't tell now because I haven't really spent time in a collegiate setting, but I was speaking at a college and PhD level. I could shit talk really well without using much profane language, unlike today. I was very, very, very close. And then I got to Westside. That was still the goal. If the strength coach thing didn't turn out, I actually got offered, some people actually, two individuals from Westside actually offered to pay my way to go down to, at the time before they relocated to Orlando. It was still in Louisville, I believe, Louisville, Kentucky. I'm probably wrong when I say that out loud. Maybe Lexington, I forgot. But the main school for WWE, the feeder school, was there, and it was like it was several $1,000s for like a month, and that wasn't including room and board. They offered to put me up down there and pay my way, and I had too much pride. I had to say no. But that was it.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to do.
I could totally see it. So who was your favorite wrestler? Who did you look up to?
I don't know if I really looked up to anyone. I'm not that delightful. I just remember watching it and appreciating it for what it was, which like my father went to school to be a film director. So I grew up in a household where there are movies and then there are films. There's two, they aren't the same. A movie's not a film. I go see Expendables, that's a movie. If I'm going to go see Oppenheimer, that's a film. That's completely different like scenario of motion picture. And so I understood like the thespianism that goes on in that, and the amount of stress that goes on in that. And I was also fascinated with the fact that these guys, whether or not you'll believe, the whole that everyone's on drugs in every professional sport, what have you, like, okay, this is a performance art. They have to be in physical shape. And I remember just watching that, like, whether or not you're on it, you have to take care of your body to a level, because people don't realize, like, unless you're John Cena or The Rock, you're getting put down 5 to 6 days a week. Like, it's maybe sometimes 7, and you're making next to no money. And it's a massive physical abuse on the body, especially the spine. The spine. It is so aggressive. If you've ever stood in a squared circle, when you get in there and you're on it and you kind of bounce around, you kind of work the ropes a little bit, and you think to yourself, I don't care if I know how to be suplexed off the top rope, even from the ground, this is gonna be fucking rough on my back. It's gonna be really bad. So I have a lot of respect for those guys and gals that do that. That's a really aggressive lifestyle, and you're sitting. Once you get done, you're on a bus, you're flying immediately to the next spot. You don't know what your eating is going to be like, what your hydration is going to be like. Your stress level's all over the place. There's a whole level to that world where, every extreme world, Joe, has like its own little inner sanctum. Like people on the outside see Westside Barbell and they think it's like, oh, this massive powerlifting hardcore thing, and you're in it, it's completely different. It's a completely different scenario. Like, you go in the back of a pro wrestling, like the locker room, it's like walking into this really mature fraternity, and it's like you walk in, this is something you can read about this in books, so I'm not giving any trade secrets here, but like, you walk in, and this is a true story. I walked in with my boss, and there must have been 50 people in there. He's like, we gotta go around, shake their hands. I was like, who? Like, you know some people here? He's like, well, I know people here, yeah, but like, we have to go shake everyone's hand. I'm looking at the room like, every single person, like 50 some odd people. He was like, yes, you're going to introduce yourself, and they're going to introduce yourself back. And as we went through, literally everyone, this is a normal thing. You're shaking their hands. You're like, hey, my name's Joe. Hey, my name's Andy. Hey, my name's Joe. Hey, my name's Tyron. Hey, and he's 50 some odd people all around. And as we sit down, I'm sitting down. Thankfully, my boss had been in the game for years, so his stage name goes by the name of Christian, and not the tall Canadian Christian either. This is Christian York. So white guy, phenomenal dreadlocks. But anyway, he was back there. I watched him do the exact same thing. I'm like, okay, so it's not just people who aren't anybody. Everyone does this. I watched a guy named Luke Gallows, who I think is back in now. I could be wrong. I watch it every 3 months, see if it's gotten any better. It really hasn't. It's turned to garbage now, but literally walked around, shook everyone's hand, introduced himself to every single fucking person in there. Every time someone walked in, and as the night went on, they're like 60, 70, like people in there to run this like 4-hour show. And it's just like people shaking everyone's hand. It was like, that's really fucking crazy to me. So this is really is a big aura of respect. So yeah, of course, like you get to like the upper echelons, there's gonna be ego, and there are gonna be people who don't like each other, and that's a whole other scenario. But you go to those like other show, like house type shows. Like, did you ever watch what was it, the Mickey Rourke movie, The Wrestler?
Yeah.
It, like, you look at the back, like that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
Exactly what it is. Like, there's no disillusion. Like, just imagine just more people in those locker rooms. It's exactly what it is. So it was really interesting to me, and it was very it's a great combination of thespianism and athleticism.
Yeah.
So that
That's
really
cool.
intrigued me to that. Yeah. What about you?
Oh, for wrestlers or just like
No,
what I
if
would
you
be
like,
doing?
if you weren't doing what you were doing, what would you be doing?
Oh, first off, I just have to say, Ultimate Warrior is the greatest wrestler of all times.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah, he was my favorite. He died
Yes,
literally 2 blocks away from my parents' house where
no
I grew up
shit.
here. Yeah. Really, R.I.P.
Did you ever see the episode of he did for that? Remember the Ultimate Warrior show he did for like I don't know how many
The
episodes?
one where
He
he was
trained
training the
like asking
it was like
Alexandria,
Amberlin,
and he was
asking
just I think
Alexandria
it was maybe I think it was asking Alexandria, and he's just fucking killing them, like throwing chains on their neck. Every time you smoke a cigarette, you're just putting on a chain and weighing you down. He throws the chain on them, and they're like vomiting because these kids were like smoking cigarettes and like drinking booze, just like vomiting and dying. And I don't know why they kept going. Probably because their producer said, "If you don't keep going, like we're gonna sue
Yep.
you." Probably.
Yeah,
That
of
was incredible.
course.
It was the best 45 minutes of my life. So
I,
great.
I I love it when that meme shows up where they show like you're shitting in a hole, and then
Yeah.
they what they'll end up doing is going to the next clip where he's like, I can't. What do you? I can't. Fuck.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
He's like, when 10,000 people are screaming your name and you say, I can't.
Yeah.
Like, dude, he's a legend.
Oh yeah.
So I'll tell you a quick, real funny story.
Okay.
So he would go to this place called New York Bagels and Bialys in Scottsdale, a little breakfast spot. So he signed a picture. They put it up on the wall. My brother and I, we were young. We weren't that grown for this part.
Okay.
We go with my parents and we see his picture and we're like, oh, the Ultimate Warrior, he's our favorite. The owner was like, oh, you like him? Like, yeah, he was just here yesterday. And we're like, that's impossible.
Yeah.
He can't be here because the Undertaker killed him and put him in a body bag. You idiot. You missed it. The guy's like, stupid kids. my dad will tell us, he's like, yeah, I was like the most embarrassed for how dumb my kids are. He's like, yeah, they believe it.
Yeah.
But I never got to meet him, but I wish I had. So anyways, what would I be doing? You know, it's tough to say, but I'm pretty sure I really do think that what I have a drive for is to run a coffee shop. I think I would be able to do it, and I think I'd do it pretty successfully. I've always had the idea to do kind of like if I could do anything, but money wasn't a thing. Like let's just say I had all the money in the world, or money didn't exist. I would start a coffee shop, and I would hire children with special needs and help them learn techniques on how to interact with the public and how to hold a job, maybe find a new skill they might have. Like especially in today's society, like there's so many things you can have a skill with, and I think you could really help children with special needs like figure out what it is that they're good at.
Yeah.
So that's what I would try to do, is to blend those two things together, because one, I love coffee. I drink a boatload of it. I don't know if you saw, I was having my little iced coffee that's now gone.
Yeah.
And and I've always had a passion of helping people, and I would like to assist people in learning along that path, and I think that that's a group of people that should be, they are very capable. And these days we're starting to notice that in special needs, like there's a lot of stuff that we used to think they couldn't do, and like here we are today, and it's like they're humans, and they have intelligence, It's like showcase it. So where do you find those specialties, so to speak? It's practice and finding something new. So it's like I would want it to be some sort of business where the schools can allow children to come in and, you know, maybe they do a semester and we put it, like, you figure out a program for that. And it's, you know, a whole encompassing kind of like everybody that goes into the shop knows what they're going to get themselves into, and support people creating a life for themselves, all through coffee.
Right. What would you call it? Don't
All
say
right,
cup of
well,
Joe.
No, definitely not.
Thank God.
So I've had this name, and some people get mad at me for the name,
Perfect.
but I think to me
Perfect.
it's more of an endearing name, and it has a different meaning than I think other people interpret it as. But I would call it special coffee and tea.
Yeah, you gotta be careful with that one. Yeah, I can see how people wouldn't like that.
Right? I know. I could see why they wouldn't like it, but it's like I don't know. Either that or I just call it some sort of chic one word name, like
Sage.
Like live. Yeah, sage, or live with an umlaut over the I.
It's like when you go like any of those like bougie, I'm sure actually Scottsdale has, we have them here in like Nationwide District. You go downtown, there's like, there are bars just called like, you know, the calf and mare.
Yeah.
And like they
why?
go, you know, the jar and cup. Like what? Like we're not in England here.
Yeah, but it's a little different over here in Scottsdale. You've got like bottled blonde, American junkies, and all these clubs.
You know, you bring that up, because you know the like when you brought up a coffee shop, because like it's phenomenal because it's a legal drug. Starbucks sells an illegal addictive drug. It's a phenomenal business model. I mean, outside of Coca-Cola, it's incredible. I can't think of anything better. If money wasn't a thing, and I could do it, I have to do it in like North Scottsdale. I'd have to do it like in like New Albany, which is kind of like the North Scottsdale of Columbus.
Okay.
Scottsdale people probably lose their mind when they hear that, but I would open up, and I don't know what I would call it, something really stupid like something exotic water emporium, and it would basically be like a liquor barn, but all water. It's all bottled water from across the world, like an exotic, you know, like glass containers, like, you know, like Dan Aykroyd, like vodka, what's in a skull. Yep. Someone in the world must make vodka. I mean, excuse me, water that's in some crazy ass fucking container of glass that just looks crazy. Like, I'm gonna pay $30 for this water from the volcano in Hawaii that has yet to be untapped, and it's like, I'm gonna pay that. And the glass is obsidian glass, and it was pressed by monkeys that were crawling through trees, and then the nuns from the mountain village put it together, handcrafted, and melted the beeswax from the rare purple bee on top of it. Like something like that couldn't miss. I can't see that missing. I'd buy water there. Shit.
I'll tell you right now, this exists.
Fuck! Are you serious?
You're gonna have to look up what's called urban water. It's here. It's in Scottsdale.
Oh fuck! It's there too. Damn it!
And dude, it's expensive ass water.
Yes.
But the best part is, like, the name to me, like, urban water.
Horrible.
Like,
Sounds like fucking sewer shit.
Drink urban water. Yeah, exactly. The people that fill it up have this like beautiful looking glass like jug. I think it's a 1 gallon jug that they sell, and I think that jug, just the glass, costs like $30, and then to fill up your water is like it's a prescription model, so I think it's like $80 a month to fill up your jugs of water. You can fill them up wherever an urban water is. But
wait, this is just a tap of water?
Yes.
Oh, I'm talking about importing water from across the globe. No, this is completely different.
Okay.
No. They can sell their fake tap water they ran through some filters. No. That's fine.
So you're gonna have imported goods.
This is gonna be like Don Corleone, you know, Genko olive oil type shit, but just with water. That's 100%. I'll sit in office. I'll have one cat. it'll be a mean fucking little thing, little Siamese
Yeah.
that just looks down on people like judgingly from top of the
Mhm.
refrigerator, which has all my chicken meals in it. It
Yep.
just judges people as they walk in. Yes, have it sorted by like country and region.
Yeah, okay, that definitely isn't how we do it.
No,
Uh,
no.
but people are, I'll tell you this, people are wasting their money on water. So they'll definitely do something like that for sure.
Oh,
If
absolutely.
they're just getting urban tap water from the sewage of Scottsdale, Arizona,
Yeah,
or
that's
wherever else it's
I
coming from.
definitely would have named that something different, man.
It's the weirdest name I've ever seen.
That's pretty rough.
Yeah,
It's
but
pretty rough.
I think it's funny. I've seen people around with these jugs. Like they come into my office and I'm like, you're you're buying that? You're gonna sit here and complain to me about my prices? Like that's fucking nuts.
Right?
Like you're actually insane if you're spending like whatever it is you're spending on, and you have many of those $30 jugs.
Mm-hmm.
It's just glass.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like I got
Yeah.
a Stanley Cup as a gift. I freaking love this thing.
Oh yeah. I got, it's funny. It's funny you bring up that. I have this nice Yeti, which of course is American made and incredibly priced at a price point that thankfully I didn't have to buy it.
Mhm.
So when you become a strength and conditioning coach, this is a little known fact. As a strength and conditioning coach, you receive a booklet. And this booklet has multiple chapters. First chapter being, what kind of whistle do you want to use for indoor
Yep.
versus outdoor environments, humidity. The second chapter is how to take super awesome selfies with your Oakleys. And the third one is a whole chapter on Yetis. What I didn't know, I've had this motherfucker for 6 years. Did you know? I'm gonna pop this off. Did you know the top of this thing right here? Did you know that's a magnet?
It's the magnet?
Yeah, this right here, this thing that clicks up and down so you can drink it.
Yeah.
That's a magnet.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So you're the first person who's told me he doesn't know. Everyone's like, well, of course it's a magnet. You just pop it off to wash it. I'm like, I have not popped that thing off. I literally lost it coming into the house. No idea how. And I was so pissed. I'm like, I don't want to spend another $30-40 on another lid.
Yeah.
And and Corella found it, my woman, like she's like, oh, here it is. I was like, shit, how am I getting this back on? I start putting it on, it just snaps on. So I text some coaches of mine, and they're like, well, yeah, it's a Yeti, it's a magnet. How do you not know that? Like, I've never known that. This blew my mind.
So someone told me on my Stanley Cup
Yeah.
that, so we have this top right here and the straw goes into this hole,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I learned this is if I turn the top, I could drink out of it right there.
Well, you didn't know that?
I didn't know that. I've had this cup for like a year now.
Delightful. So I'm not the only one in this weird, super awesome cup hole.
I'll be honest. I'm not digging that much deeper on a cup to be like, if it was, I barely do it with my computer, so what's going to make me do it with my cup?
Right.
I spend my time, doing, going deeper into other worlds like, anatomy, physiology, and training.
Right.
So when I tell someone, I'm like, did you know this? They're like, what? I'm like, how can you not know that? Same thing for this cup.
Right.
They're like, how did you not know that? I'm like, because I just don't put my time there. Sorry.
See, unfortunately, in the strength conditioning manual we get when we become blessed strength conditioning coaches, that's actually chapter 4.
Yeah.
And I think I skipped right to chapter 4 after I breezed through the Oakley section. So,
well, was chapter 6 the one where that's about the khaki pants with tucked in with polo?
Oh, that's game day dress wear. Yes, that continues 6 and 6A.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I read that.
Yeah.
I do think I read that book.
Because there are multiple shirts and attire, Oh yeah.
At St. Mary's, it was so funny. You can easily tell who the strength coaches were, like the ATCs, who the PTs were, who the MDs were, and then
that's a thing.
Yeah, and then there was me, the guy wearing trying his hardest to wear a t-shirt and short shorts to go work on people.
Yeah,
and call himself a chiropractor.
Yeah, I remember when I was at James Madison, and during that time, it was a time before interns had to be paid.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was all about it. So I probably spent more time than I should have doing that, like 25-30 hours out of the week.
Yeah.
And so game day would show up, and the plan was we do the day before, like, hey, we're wearing this khaki, we're wearing this polo. We had like like 2 different khakis. We had like 3 or 4 different polos. I remember one day showing up and like we all had that khaki. Of course, all the coaches had like a standing dresser in there with all their
Mhm.
khakis in it. And like I had mine all the way back in my dorm, which was like 2 miles away. And they like last second had the head like football coach like, you know what, we're gonna wear this color today. I've changed my mind. And so they all started changing. And I had to run like 2 miles. Because again,
You go
I'm
get your
too proud. I have
pants.
too much pride. My ego very, very low, pride very, very high. I'd be
Yeah.
damned if I'm gonna be this really weird, like black sheep, ran all the way across campus on game day, ran all the way back just in time to like watch out the recruits walk into the weight room. Like
Oh,
it was crazy. So that is the thing. That is the
yeah.
thing.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I remember I was supposed to wear khakis to one of the basketball games, and I showed up, and my wardrobe at that time was like it was like I'm telling you, short shorts. I always wear short shorts or Lululemon pants, and
Mhm.
so I wore my tan ones, and that was like right when I walk in. I'm definitely wearing a different color tan than everybody else. They're all
Yeah.
wearing because at that time I think they were sponsored by it was was it Adidas or Under Armour? I think it was it was Under Armour. So I they hadn't figured out my sizes yet, so they're like, just make sure you wear khakis. I'm like, got it. So I wear my Lululemon pants, and right when I walk in, they're like, those are Lululemon. I'm like, I know, they're really nice, aren't they? They're really comfortable.
Yeah, you can't do that though.
Let's go do this. And
Oh,
oh,
really?
dude, oh yeah,
They let you
they
do it?
let me stay in them. Yeah, they let me stay in them, but dude, they were so pissed. They're like, you can't wear that. Those are way nicer than what we're wearing. I was like, you didn't give me pants. You didn't tell me what to go get. I would have gotten them.
Yeah.
Honestly, if they had told me like you need to wear these, I would have done
Right.
that. They just told me wear khaki. I was like, it's khaki colored.
Well, I mean, if there's a hard sponsorship, especially if they're like on television, like if you're
Yeah,
wearing something that
I wasn't gonna be on TV.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. But like if you
Yeah,
are and you're not, like you
that's a
have to put
problem.
duct tape over,
Yeah,
whatever, emblem you have. Oh yeah, that's a
yeah.
thing. That's a hard
Yeah,
that's too much
yeah.
money in that.
Eventually, I did have to wear when I was like sitting behind the players. Then I had to
Mhm.
wear all the whole get up.
Yeah, yeah.
Couldn't even wear my shoes.
No.
Yeah, but hey, that's part of the world, I guess.
Yeah. Well, is there anything you wanna add before we log off or anything you want to plug before we see each other next week?
Nothing I could think of off the top of my head right now. But I'm excited to see where this takes us. And have awesome conversations about strength conditioning, life, and everything. Um, I've got a flurry of questions I'm going to be bringing at you that I think not only myself, but you know, for the viewers, my wife was getting programmed by Joe over here.
Yeah,
We got 2 Joes on this pod. It's
I
going to be
know it's gonna be
confusing.
confusing for a while.
Yeah, we'll probably have to tell people Mustache Joe and No Mustache Joe,
Yeah, so you have to get
or
rid of yours
Backwards Hat
then.
Joe. Yeah, oh yeah, that's right. I get a little bit.
Yeah.
Mine's just more Italian looking, I guess, or dirty. Dirt. They could call me Joe Dirt, and they just call you Joe. How about
It's
that?
funny about that. That's actually what my nickname was at Westside for a long time.
Was it really?
Yeah, the first day I pulled up there, forgot, I think it was a Friday morning. No, no, Monday morning. It was a Monday morning. I pulled up, I was like parked like 1 or 2 spots across the parking lot from the office. Of course, they were
Mhm.
all like Doris, like Lou's wife, and like the 2 office workers were still in there. And I get out, I'm like, man, it's really humid here. I don't care. I'm from Virginia, dude. I've done backpacking excursions of 100 plus miles. I don't care. So I'm in compression shorts. I just like, well, screw it. Let's get these jeans off. Put some shorts on. Take my jeans right off in the parking lot. Put my shorts on. I don't care. I'm in compression shorts. I'm on the west side of Columbus. You've been there.
Yeah.
I don't think anything's going to happen. I think it's going to be
No.
fine. I think that's pretty tame for that area. And so Doris saw that. It's like, what the fuck is going on out there? And like, little do people know, like that's again really tame for Westside too. And so eventually she told Lou the story, and they just kind of birthed the thing of like, oh, his name's Joe. Let's just call him Joe Dirt. Because we had me and we had Joe Persia, who was, we just called him Jersey Joe or Jumping
Yep.
Joe, because he was jumping on like a 60 plus inch box.
Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a lot more explosive than I was.
Yeah. That's pretty high.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Well, what I
yeah.
was getting at was that my wife, trained with you, and she
Yeah.
did awesome with the training, and really appreciated and loved every second of every part of the program that you sent her. Um, and so she's been thinking about, how her training is going to look as she's, recovering from the birth.
Right.
And so she's like, I'll have so many good questions. And I'm like, okay,
Okay.
we'll have some questions. We'll see what we got.